So welcome back, and hopefully you got a bit of a space there. And I was aware I was talking a lot this morning, so hopefully we'll have a bit of space to do some sharing or something this afternoon. But I wanted to start with the ritual, and now I did send the ritual, but I will put it up on the screen. And the ritual comes from, as many of you will know, Diarmuid O'Murchu, and he actually prepared this for Ash Wednesday, which I've kind of adapted. So it was an Ash Wednesday service. And I think it really grew out of what we were doing this morning, was how this language, or how do we incorporate this into the rituals that we do? Do you know what I mean? In terms of language, in terms of symbolism or whatever. And I don't know, and this is not being overly critical, but although we're seeing some of this in some of the church documents, I don't really see it reflected in a lot of our churches. And so certainly in our church rituals. So how does this, you know, how can it? So this, as I say, I thought this was a nice ritual that we could do together, and that kind of picks up really something of what we were saying this morning. So I'm looking for some people who will do some of the things together. I'll share the screen if you haven't got a copy of it. Hopefully this will work. Okay, so just wondering if we could have, it's a bit larger so you can see it. We could have somebody who, we could do the prayers together, although we'll ask that we mute when we're doing that, just so that we're not, otherwise it can be a bit difficult. If somebody would like to do the reading, would somebody offer to do the reading for us, the reading from John O'Donoghue? And I'm kind of, okay, yeah. Thanks. And the ritual of earthing we'll do together. We can talk through that. And then there's a litany. It'd be nice if we had a couple of different voices. So maybe if two people just alternated that and we can all respond.
Yes.
So who am I hearing the yes from?
Trace.
Okay, thank you. So Anna's doing the reading, is it, Trace? And anybody else who'd like to do that? And you'll have to unmute yourself because we'll be muted for the rest of it. So Trace is doing it, and anybody else do the litany?
Yes, I'll do it.
And who's the yes? Sorry, I just can't see. Who's the yes?
Claire.
Claire, Claire, that's helpful. Okay, so Trace and Claire will alternate on the, if you start, Trace, and then just alternate, we can respond, and then we'll do the concluding prayer together. So just to, I suppose, just to kind of steep ourselves a bit more in what we were talking about this morning, what does it look like when we try and, I suppose, incorporate this into the rituals that we use? So this is just one way, and I thought it's nice. And Diarmuid is very good at doing this, and he's always very good at sharing his resources. So his website's worth visiting as well. So we're going together, and hopefully this time the music will work. So just invite you to gather yourself, if you've got your candle, and have your earth ready. And I'm just going to hopefully play a song to begin with. Okay, and just thought, as I say, although it's Ash Wednesday, this was initially for Ash Wednesday, but still in that Lenten season of kind of, I suppose, reflecting on ourselves, reminding ourselves where we've come from, looking at our relationships, and reminding ourselves that we are on the earth.
Consciousness waking, holy and whole, creation stirring, birthing anew, holy to rise in our midst. Consciousness waking, holy and whole, creation stirring, birthing anew. Now is the time, we are the space for the holy to rise in our midst. Consciousness waking, holy and whole, creation stirring, birthing anew. Now is the time, we are the space for the holy to rise in our midst. Now is the time, we are the space for the holy to rise in our midst.
So we pray together. Then just remind you to put yourselves on mute, just so that but please pray out loud where you are. Gracious Spirit, energizing all that begets and sustains life, Spirit of our living earth, enlivening source of all that nurtures us as earthlings, creatures of the living creation. Today we celebrate in gratitude our earthiness and all that enriches our lives. Awaken us to the organic meaning of our earthly existence. And through this experience of empowering ritual, bless us with the wisdom and grace to live ever more fully in our care and nurturance for the earth that forever cares for us. And with grateful hearts, we make this prayer. Amen. So thank you, Anna.
Okay, so the reading is from John O'Donoghue's Annam Cara. Essentially, we belong beautifully to nature. The body knows this belonging and desires it. It does not exile us, either spiritually or emotionally. The human body is at home on the earth. We so easily forget that our clay has a memory, a life of its own before it took our present form. Regardless of how modern we seem, we still remain ancient sisters and brothers of one clay. In each of us, a different part of the mystery becomes luminous. Maybe some clay comes from beside a calm lake, some from places where nature was exposed and lonely, and more from secluded and reserved places. We never know how many places of nature meet within the human body. Landscape is not only external, it has crept into the soul. Human presence is infused with landscape. We need to return to the solitude within, to find again the dream that lies at the heart of the soul. Our clay shape gradually learns to walk beautifully on this magnificent earth.
So we're now invited to take the soil in your hands and just rub it onto your palm in a circular, just rub it, making a circle on your palm. Now, if there's a couple of you together, you might do this for each other. So just spend some time rubbing the soil, that clay, just into your hand, maybe in a circular movement, maybe in making the sign of the cross on your hand. And as we're doing this, is to say to each other, if we're with somebody, we can say it to the person, but just to say to yourself out loud the words that are written there. Receive the gift of earth's soil. Cherish the earth from which God has formed you, and tend with loving care all that God has entrusted to your care. You may want to do both hands. And as we sit with the soil, we ask forgiveness for the ways we neglect, abuse or exploit our own bodies and the earth body. And awaken within us compassion and care, tenderness and love for all the gifts of creation. Amen. We'll just invite those who are leading us. I think it's Trace and Claire, is it, for the litany?
Maybe I'm not on mute. Now you say it again. From the energy of creation through which the Spirit co-creates all life. Response.
Creatures of earth, praise the
Praise the Holy One.
For all embodied creatures with which we share the web of life.
Creatures of earth, praise the Holy One. For the gift of our earthness, that we may live as dignified earthlings. Creatures of earth, praise the Holy One.
For the land entrusted to our care, and for all who farm our land.
Creatures of earth, praise the Holy One. For every garden that feeds and nourishes pollinators for life. Creatures of earth, praise the Holy One.
For the fruits of earth and the diverse gifts of season.
Creatures of earth, praise the Holy One. From the rivers and lakes and the waters that sustain all life. Creatures of earth, praise the Holy One.
For the seed that dies in each season to produce nourishment for life.
Creatures of earth, praise the Holy One. For the healing resources of trees and plants. Creatures of earth, praise the Holy One.
For the animals who adorn the landscape of our daily lives.
Creatures of earth, praise the Holy One. For all who work for eco-justice, protecting Earth's fragility. Creatures of earth, praise the Holy One.
If anyone would like to offer any other prayers. And so we pray together. Creator
and
Holy One, we thank you for the gift of life. Bless us as you fashion us from the clay of the earth. And bless the earth womb that sustains and nourishes us with the dawning hope of each new day. Amen. And invite you to maybe put back the clay that you haven't used back in the garden or back in your plant pot. And I'm not going to end with "we are connected," but I am going to end with, sorry, oh, lost it now. I'm going to end with a little video. And which I lost. So I'll just pull that up and okay. And share the screen, and that might be helpful. And then after that we'll offer. So I'm just going to end with these are kind of reflections, again picking up some of the stuff that we were saying earlier this morning, and there's a whole library of resources here. So as much as anything, it's introducing you to some resources that are available for everybody to use. So welcome back. And it's a beautiful reflection, isn't it? And there's some lovely resources on that website, actually, which we'll give you a link to, either for yourselves or for sharing with groups. And I'm aware I spoke a lot. So before maybe we move, I think I might take a bit of time just for you to go into your groups and to have a bit of sharing just of what is kind of coming up for you, or what's staying with you from the morning, even from the ritual or from the reflection. And a question which I was going to give it at the end, but maybe I'm bringing it forward. Like, I suppose, what does Eucharist mean to me? And do I experience Eucharist as communion? And communion in the sense of how we kind of tried to hold it this morning, that broader sense of communion, connectedness. So now there's a lot to say there, but maybe just to connect with your group again. And so I think we're going into our group for 15 minutes.
Hello, Mary.
We're all back, I think. Are we all back? Is it now? Very good. So just, well, I was in one of the breakout groups and there was some very good sharing. So just offer a little bit of time. If people want to offer any wisdom or any questions or what's staying with them, or even from what they've heard in their groups. We'll give a bit of time to that, because I'm certainly aware certainly in the group I was in, there was some very good kind of questions and searching and wisdom being shared. So we'll offer it to anybody who would like to offer something into the larger group.
One of the questions that came up was, we present a very beautiful view of creation, but actually, there are things in creation which aren't very beautiful, and negative things. And the question of the fall, really, or wherever you talk about it, how is there evil? How is there suffering? How is there, even in nature, there's violence and horrible things going on? And how do we fit the, the negatives with the positives? That's one of the things that came up at the beginning of our discussion anyway, which is, if you take a long view of it, I think things work themselves out, but the nature of creation, I guess you get a whole package, don't you, of things in creation.
Well, here's some more, and then maybe we can respond to some, or if anyone wants to. Can I just say, I'm certainly not saying I have all the answers. I think one of the things in my group was saying we do need to really, there's so much in this that requires a lot of deep reflection, but I think what you're raising is a very good question that we need to reflect on in light of this. How do we understand suffering? How do we understand sin and evil in the world? And yet we know that sense of, as you say, violence is there in eruptions, dying, new life. It's very much part of the whole evolving story. So maybe we've created lots of stories around to help us understand suffering, but how, maybe we, that there is, I think there's a lot to unpack there, as you say, about how we understand suffering in that context.
My question, I was the one that brought it up, wasn't so much the problem of suffering in the world as some creatures I would want to get rid of. So I don't want to kill a panda, but I will get the domestos out to kill the unseen bacteria on my work surfaces. And I will try and get rid of COVID-19 if I can. So if the message is the whole of creation is beautiful and every creature has the right to fulfill its potential, I'm thinking I'll use flea powder if I need to. If I got bed bugs in my mattress, I would burn the mattress. So I am drawing the line at a certain point.
Can I just can I just say something? We talked about the fragility of the earth, and I think that's quite powerful. You know, and as part of that fragility, there's a sort of there's ecosystems. So there's biodiversity, because as I say, I work in a school, and we one of the things, there's loads of things we do regarding working outside. So we look at, we go bug hunting, and then someone will say, what's the use of that? So if we find a cockroach or something like that, and we say, well, they're good because they've got a purpose, and they help because toads or frogs will eat them, and then someone will eat the frogs, and it's all part of the sort of wider biodiversity. I know it doesn't answer the question about bacteria, but I think it's about getting children to fall in love with the earth, I think. And I mentioned in our breakout group, during the last lockdown, we grew some potatoes, and I didn't take a picture of it, but I would, if I would have. It was such a strong image when a child put her hand into a grow bag and pulled out a potato and looked at it and said, "It's a potato." Never seen one before. She'd obviously seen a potato, but never seen one come from the ground. And and it's about getting children and at that level to fall in love with the earth and embrace it for what it is. So that shows how fragile the earth is. And
Agree.
Thanks for sharing that, Joe, because you've also given us what maybe things that we can do as well, because some of the things we were sharing in our group was what do we do, or what can, and it's almost so overwhelming at times. But that's a lovely example of how, and often, and I don't mean this patronizingly, it can be sometimes simple things, and it is about, again, any ways that we can reconnect, and that love, I think, as you say, that's to harness that kind of, how do we reconnect with our hearts, not just with our heads, because that's the real thing, I think, that we're being called to in all of this.
How about growing a tree?
Yeah, absolutely.
Planting a tree. A child loves the idea of planting something, doesn't it? Like you just said, Joe.
Yeah.
And I think it will be, we have a community wood coming on stream. And some of us have already said that we'd like to put a plaque on each tree for everybody that died due to COVID, as a permanent memorial. And I think we need to remember the good things of life, but also the bad things, because everything is light and dark. So we should shine even to the light to defeat the darkness, and the darkness of ignorance and not understanding and not living with creation, but going against creation, destroying the root of creation, like going and planting palm trees in Amazonia, destroying the ecosystem there, killing off the animals and the plants and the bugs, even though the medical profession has said Amazonia is producing quite a lot of drugs. We don't know, because God created the world, so he gave us everything. And they're still investigating, things that they could use, synthesize from nature, that will help us to fight illnesses and diseases. Like look at the foxglove. You would never have thought years ago, it's a nice plant, it looks beautiful when it's growing. But then they realized that it gave us digitalis, which helped people with heart conditions. It's creating balance. And if we knock the balance off, then creation gets knocked off balance. And then it's up to us to recreate and try and get us back on an even keel. Because if we don't look after the earth, who else is going to? And little things, like Teresa of Calcutta said, start with little things. And then big things will grow.
Again, reminded what we do to ourselves, we do to the earth. So we need.
Yes, exactly. It's a balance all the time.
Yeah. I think one of the questions in my group was a bit, and you mentioned that COVID, like, where does COVID fit into all of this, or what's being asked of us now in this time? So I don't want to preempt that. Sorry, somebody else was going to come in there. Was it Claire? Were you going to say something, Claire?
I was going to say in our parish, from Pope Francis Live Simply 3 years ago, we started an allotment, and it's been absolutely brilliant for the parish and for the children too. The children enjoyed it, of course, not since COVID they couldn't come, but prior to that it was lovely to see them setting the seeds and then planting them and then coming along and taking the beans home and the potatoes home and that sort of thing. So we're really thrilled. We're fortunate that we've got the land, but and also we did made a bug hotel, and we've got loads of little bugs around, so that'll be good when the children can come back up again, hopefully during this summer. I think it'll be a joy for us all to see them.
Thank you, Claire. Jim, you were wanting to say something?
Yeah, all I wanted to do was just give a little bit of light support to Jennifer's comments about the perhaps slightly more unpleasant sides of creation, as it were. And I think we can all, in differing degrees, relate to that. And it's just a little light comment that she does have. She is sharing that concern with others. Back in the late 80s, CAFOD were campaigning then on environment and development. They had a campaign called Renewing the Earth. And they responded to the upsurge in sudden interest in creation theology by putting on various events. And I went to a weekend one where, amongst others, Sean McDonough, the Columban priest theologian, was doing major input there. And somebody asked him a similar question to Jennifer's, and I can't remember his exact words, but essentially the message was, well, yes, there is a need in effect for a sense of perspective. And he said, if I was, because at the time he worked a lot in the Philippines, and he says, if I'm trapped in a shower with a mosquito, it's not going to end well for the mosquito. So, Jennifer, you're in good company.
I think we can. That's good.
Thank you.
Okay. So thank you. Anything else that just seeing anything else that came up for us? Anybody else want to offer anything?
Can I come in, please? Something. Can I just develop this? If it's okay to kill or destroy things I don't like. So what happened when we started to grow food and sell food, not become growing our own food, but as societies especially in the developed world developed and grew, so farming became much more intensive, much bigger farms, and they're growing all these crops, and so the pests were eating some of the crops, so we didn't like the pests. We developed pesticides and killed all the pests off, and what happened is the birds then started dying off because the birds hadn't got any food because they would eat the pests, and it goes on and on. The bees at the moment is critical. The number of bees that has decreased so dramatically that we're in danger of not having insects which are going to pollinate our food crops anyway. Butterflies have been decimated. So it's this mindset. It's okay to kill pests on crops because we're going to eat them, but is it okay to kill that mosquito or whatever? I don't know. I would kill the mosquito probably. I'd just bang without thinking. But now I'm starting to think, and I don't know what my answer should be. But you see, when we start, maybe I think the root is our societies have developed in the Western world, in the developed world, if you like, Western Europe, North America, and so on. And others are trying to catch us up. We are using far too much of the Earth's resources, far more than is our due, if you like. And the rest of the world are really, really suffering because of our greed and selfishness, or if you like, because of our blindness. Sorry.
Yeah, no, thank you. And yeah, as you say, you're raising some of the difficulties we, yeah, some of the issues. It's complex. I suppose that's what we're seeing. It's not easy to always work out. I think some of the things that I'm just reminded again of our Indigenous, the wisdom that they offer often is about having a balance. We need to be able to, like many, when they kill things, they don't kill everything. Like there's a sense in which there's something we need to honor. You know, maybe we've gone too far really in terms of what that tipping point or balance is in all sorts of ways, whether it's in our relationship with each other, but also with all of creation. But it's not an easy one, I agree. And I suppose coming back to what we were saying this morning about nurturing that sacredness within all things, the interconnectedness of all things, which you've said, that when we kill or damage one part of a system, it affects the whole. And just more awareness about that maybe is what we're trying to grow in, I think, for all of us. And I think, as you say, we are now much more aware, but as somebody was saying, even with relation to climate change, it's not stopping our behaviour. Even though we know all this damage is happening, it's not stopping us continuing to do the damage. So what is it we need in order to change course? And it's not that we don't know what's going to happen because we've been faced with it, but there is something that we need to something deep within. And I think, I know, Joe, you said about falling in love. There's something that's needed even in the hearts of each one of us. And I speak for myself. I'm not you know, that what is it that I really need to do in order to change some of my, you know, lots of what I'm doing, which I know isn't sustainable or not going to be helpful. And I think we have to look, like there are other movements. We see what's happening around the world, people who are rising, other voices, and who are with this new consciousness, and how they may not be necessarily within our churches or in our circles, but we need to, there is a mobilization, I think, that's happening, and somehow we need to connect with that and part of that. And I think that might help. Well, I'm hoping it will help myself as well in terms of change. I'm going to, I'm conscious of the time and we could talk, and I just want to come back to our picture. Is that all right this morning? And that we started with, and just come back to this. And I just want to offer, and there was such rich reflections this morning, and I'm just going to read you the reflection that came from the artist herself when she sat with this and worked with it, and then so then we'll just see how this sits with you and how it might, you know, bringing things together. So the community gathered around the table signifies our sharing of life, love, and Earth's gifts with our brothers and sisters everywhere. And this community is part of Earth's communion of life. We can see Brother Sun, Sister Moon, the rocks, wind, fire, and water, and all that lives and grows in the sea and the soil. The oak tree is there, and the acorns, and they are, they symbolize that, I suppose, the gift of our presentation charism, because this was particularly for the presentation congregation. But I suppose every community has its own, maybe unique, every family, there might be something that that you could see yourself in, that could hold your family, your story. The fire rising from the bottom centre, the burning bush, reminds us that we're on holy ground wherever we are. And the top is a medieval symbol for God that reminds us that divine energy permeates this intricately woven web of life, binding us all together in one sacred community. So when we gather round our tables, whether at home or in places of worship, we share the fruits of this sacred communion of life, and we come with grateful hearts. All are welcome, all are interconnected. Every meal is sacred, Eucharistic. And when we recognize that some creatures have given their lives that others may live, we may say that the universe is a banquet, and that every being in the universe puts itself on the table, gives itself generously as nourishment for the good of the whole. I'm reminded of that quote from John 17, verse 21, may they all be one.
Yeah.
It's a very Eucharistic image. And Eucharistic in the sense, you know, there's the two kind of paradigms or flows when we think of Eucharist. The Eucharist, I'll say with the big E, which is like the sacrament of the Eucharist, or Mass as we would say. And then the Eucharist with maybe the small e. And that was, I suppose, when we think about the life of Jesus, most of his meals were with the small e. They were, I suppose, sharing it with people around the table. And to remember as well in Jesus's time that the sharing of food, living in a very structured, legalistic and hierarchical society that Jesus lived in, he challenged, as we know, so many of those laws by eating and drinking with the sinners, with outcasts and women. And so by embracing that open table, Jesus taught us that all people are to be included in the community of God's people. And as I say, we've expanded that to include not just the community of human beings, but the community of all life. So I know in our group, we were sharing a little bit about how maybe sometimes our experiences of Eucharist or in churches may not always hold something of this. And this, it's very difficult. I'm aware there are some priests among us, so I'm not trying to be, but how do we get this, how do we bring this some awareness in some way? And I think the situation of COVID has made it probably worse for us all. We talked about the separateness that we now have if you can go to church, and for those who can't, we've just become passive observers, really, maybe watching it online. And although there was a bit of novelty about that, maybe I'm speaking for myself, that in the beginning, certainly, you know, I do have to step back and say, what's this about? Am I just going to, out of a devotion, out of a kind of a sense of duty? How am I really experiencing Eucharist in this way? And I've also been blessed that I did have a couple of experiences, and one of them was a few weeks ago with Deane, who led us in a Eucharistic, in a sharing of Eucharist, and it was gathered people from around the world, really. And he led us in a ritual where there was a sharing of the word. It's a very different kind of ritual of Eucharist, but I also know a few parishes where they haven't broadcast Mass online. They haven't gone down that route, and they've offered, they've given out the readings of the Sunday and invited people to gather to share the reflection on the word and come and share a meal as part of that. So the people and the priest then, for those who wanted Mass, maybe they've given a link to other sources, but the priest didn't actually celebrate Mass in that parish. So I've heard lots of different ways that people have tried. I suppose I'm just saying, I think there's a missed opportunity in some ways for us to maybe explore different ways that we can celebrate, and even rituals. And I suppose that was one of the reasons of offering you as well, the ashing ritual, that, you know, maybe there are, and maybe some of that language doesn't fit with you, but we need to make rituals that are inclusive, that bring in different elements, hold this story in our own context wherever we're working. And you know, I know some of you are talking about working with children. I know Susan, who I live with here, does a lot of work with the school next door, and they use that Eucharist, which was lovely, with the ritual with the ash, with the soil, with the children, which was just lovely. And then the children who were in the school at the time then were able to video that and share it with the rest of the school. So I just offer that as kind of how we, you know, that some of the struggles really for all of us. And just that I suppose the quote there from Sally McFay, you know, what we're needing really is this return to this radical hospitality that's needed in all of our lives, particularly in relation, even what we were saying there about how we see the wider world of communion. And I suppose I didn't want to leave today because without kind of coming to Teilhard de Chardin, who was mentioned in that video, because I suppose part of COVID reminded me of his experience, because can you remember when he was banished off to China, and he had that experience where he wasn't able to celebrate Mass, he had no altar, no, and we have this beautiful experience where he's in the desert, the middle of China, in the desert, and as I say, was unable to celebrate Mass sacramentally as we know it. But he offered us this reflection as the dawn was breaking. I have neither bread nor wine nor altar. I will raise myself beyond these symbols up to the pure majesty of the real itself. I, your priest, will make the whole earth my altar, and on it will offer you all the labors and sufferings of the world. And as he looked over the horizon, and the sun touched the light in the outermost fringe of the eastern sky, he also said, I will place on my pattern, O God, the harvest to be won by this renewal of labor, and into my chalice I will pour all the sap which is to be pressed out this day from the earth's fruits. My pattern and my chalice are the depths of a soul laid widely open to all the forces which in a moment will rise up from every corner of the earth and converge upon the spirit. Grant me the remembrance and the mystic presence of all those whom the light is now awakening to this new day. And receive, O Lord, this all-embracing host, which your new creation, moved by your magnetism, offers you at the dawn of a new day. So in a sense, that sense of offering his life, all his sufferings, all the work that is being offered on the table, which is being opened and asked for blessing and that is his Eucharist or Mass on the world. I'll just bring us out for a moment, just as we pause. And again, I think I asked that question earlier. What does Eucharist mean to me? Who do I share my table with? And do I experience Eucharist as communion? Now, I know this is a huge question. We can't even begin to, but it's really, I suppose, asking us to reflect on, in light of all of this, how do we experience Eucharist? How do we speak about Eucharist, understand it, and how do we celebrate it? Both with a big E in terms of the sacrament of Eucharist, but also the call to Eucharistic living, the call to share food. I know maybe many of us are isolating and this is a difficult time, but how do we make rituals when we celebrate with family, with friends? How can we celebrate this sense of life? All life is being shared at our table, sharing our stories and being part of this whole communion of life that we're called to. Now, I was going to end it there, and from the point of view of what I want to share, but I don't know if in relation to that anybody has anything to offer.
Hi, Mary. What you're saying very much resonates with me about the church, and thank you for that, and thank you for the materials you shared with us. You know, I'm really glad I came today. Thank you.
So am I.
I will make these. I think a few people were saying there's a lot to take in, so obviously we'll send the material and what I will send it to.
Thank you, Mary.
That can be made available.
Thank you very much.
You need to sit with it, I think.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, thanks, Mary. That was plenty of food for thought, especially as we come up to Holy Week and all that. Plenty to think about and reflect on. Thank you. That was excellent.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you very much, Mary.
Thank you.